Hello, Caden Turnquest.
Yeah, Mark Dixon. Yeah.
Okay, first, you agree to this meeting being recorded and used for foundations of communication?
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the questions then.
Okay.
Can you briefly describe your role and experience in any sort of water management and sanitation?
I don't have much experience with the sanitation part. I guess my main background has to do with ecology of floodplains and to some extent the water resources associated with them too. So conservation and ecology of river floodplains and to some extent the rivers also that flow along those. So I have some background on issues related to the Missouri River especially.
Okay, that's nice to know. What initially motivated you to have background in water and clean water management or things that relate to it?
I think my main, it sort of goes back to my education, my career. I had a mentor a number of years ago who studied river floodplains and the effects that management of rivers had on those floodplains, especially on the vegetation. And did some work for him 30 years ago on the Platte River and then on the Snake River in Idaho, looking at the effects that the ways that the rivers were managed in terms of dams and things like that, what those effects were on the vegetation that grew along the river. And I always thought it was a really interesting field. Enjoyed being able to see that direct interaction between river management and management of water and things like that, and then the biological effects. And I think it's pretty relevant too. A lot of our rivers are really heavily managed for human use, naturally, right, for water supply and other things. But it's relevant then to understand what the effects of our use are going to be on the ecosystems as a whole. So that's kind of the reason I've gone into that direction, I guess, for the last, 30 years now. Really.
Okay. So, what are some of the biggest challenges the U.S. face in having good water management?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, there's several different issues with that, I guess. There's one issue is water supply. So the availability of water is important for a lot of things, I think for drinking water and for hydroelectric power, like with rivers, and irrigation and things like that. So the availability of water is important, and that can be a function of weather and of climate. And so if we have patterns, in the future with climate change, or even just now with droughts and things like that, that puts a lot of strain on the human water use, and that also puts strain then on the ecosystems as well. So that's a big issue. Another big one is more like the water quality, like you said, in terms of pollution. And so a lot of our lands are used for various things, industrial, but also things like agriculture. And with every land use we have, especially if it's, if there's a connection with water body, with runoff into storm drains or into creeks and things like that, there's going to be challenges there with these types, of land use and putting fertilizer in the crop fields and things like that. Sort of the biggest challenge in the old days, years ago, the big challenge was, there's a factory and there's a pipe and there's pollution going from that pipe into the water. Now the bigger challenge is, what do we do if our whole landscape is being used for various human activities, and you have kind of this this more kind of diffuse sources of pollution that it's like nobody's fault exactly, one person. It's more like this general use we have, and that's a little bit more challenging than to kind of work with everybody and to manage that situation, reduce pollution in those cases. There's a big issue with that in Iowa. They had that issue about a decade ago, where there was concern of the land use by farmers along the Raccoon River in Iowa, and how just sort of that diffuse use across the whole area affected the water quality in Des Moines. And they were trying to figure out how can we reduce all those those pollutants that are getting into the river and having to get treated at Des Moines Water Works. And that was kind of an example of just this, just this diffuse effect from all the people using the land in various ways, and the challenges with that.
So, has anything similar happened in Vermilion or around it?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Maybe not exactly my precise example there. There were some water quality problems a few years ago, though. I think back in, I'm trying to remember now, if it was back in 2024 or before that, where we had some flooding that actually, I think, cut through some of the, maybe some of the sewer lines that were going to the water treatment plant down by the Vermilion River. And so for a little bit of time back then, because of the flooding cut through that, we actually had limited capability to really clean up the water, the sewage that was going into the Vermilion River at that time. So that's a little different example, but you can have cases like that where, theoretically we have all the infrastructure in place that's supposed to clean up the water and do that, but you have some kind of a natural disaster, sometimes that temporarily, goes offline and you have a big pollution problem.
Okay. So do you think climate change or any extreme weather effect, as you say, has like any major effect on water resources in communities such as Vermilion?
I think climate change could have a big effect. Some things in Vermilion maybe not so much. I think a lot of our drinking water in Vermilion comes from groundwater. That's probably a little bit buffered from that. It's not going to be affected dramatically in the short term. The Missouri River and things like the hydroelectric power generated by the river and problems with floods and things like that, that's going to be affected by climate change quite a bit. Where if you have overall a drier climate, you're going to have less water supply and less power generation and things. But then if you have sort of stronger extremes, like in 2024 we had that flooding, if you have like really intense precipitation that occurs, unusually high, then we can get things like the flooding we saw then with the Big Sioux River and the Missouri River. So that's one forecast of climate change, actually, is not just changes in average conditions, but things are going to get more extreme dry, more extreme temporary wet. And so yeah, I think we could see some problems with those types of things happening. I think we have already a little bit.
Okay, understandable. So what do you think are like the primary concerns in that area for Vermilion residents?
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you think that a sanitation systems would help or no?
Well, I think we did see one problem with the sanitation system back, I think it was just a little bit more than a year ago, where we had that flood that knocked out the sewage lines that were taking water to the water treatment plant. And so we did have a big problem there temporarily with not being able to properly treat our sewage that was going into the Vermilion River. So I don't know how they fixed it, whether they've sort of fixed it in a way that's protected against that happening in the future, or whether that's still something to be concerned about.
So do you think as climate change effect becomes worse and worse that the sewer systems and the water management systems would need to be adjusted?
I'm not sure for Vermilion so much. We're using groundwater for our drinking water, I think. I think some places it might. I think here the main problem with the sewage system is just that the flood cut through those lines. So I don't know if that it's more just sort of a random thing that happened. But I think in general, if we nationwide, maybe more, we need to take into account if possible effects of climate change on how much water we're going to have available for doing various things. Especially if those are drawn from rivers, like hydroelectric power and irrigation water and things like that. Vermilion, I'm not sure. I'm not sure as much if we're very sensitive to those types of things, but I think it all has some effect. I think we probably get some of the energy from the dams on the Missouri River too, some of the hydroelectric energy. And so I suppose that could be affected somewhat if we have climate change effects in terms of our power maybe being more expensive if we get less water coming through the dams or things like that.
Okay. So, any current challenges the water faced by Vermilion? Do you think that how do you think Vermilion city leaders and universities, like important officials of this community, can come together and face any challenges?
Yeah, I don't really, beyond what I said, I'm not really sure what the direct effects will be of climatic change. But I probably, like a lot of people, I could be overlooking what some of them are too. I think one of the best things to do is just if the maybe the city and the county and the state especially could think about what are the possible effects if we of more significant climate change. The university can help inform on that. And so just having the conversation about what might we do more broadly if we start seeing some changes in water supply or in other things that we need to adapt to locally. And so I think just having that awareness and just thinking about it ahead of time is helpful. Just having it as part of our planning that we take in, that we start thinking about what are the possible effects we could see if the Vermilion River started flooding more often, or if the Missouri River, not as much water was coming through, so power generation was less. Just take some of those things into account. Maybe with the storm drain system too. Are they set up properly to accommodate if we get really high, bigger precipitation events than we've had in the past? Are they designed to deal with those types of things, or do we need to adjust them in some way?
Okay, so the first step they need to take is they need to talk about it. They need to first become aware of it.
I think awareness, and just that's something. Maybe even brainstorming, right? Just what are the possible effects, and it's just maybe assessing, are there things that they need to take into account as they build new neighborhoods and they put in storm drain systems and things like that? Are there things that they need to take into account there to accommodate if we get bigger rainfall events in the future, for instance, or not? So I guess, like you say, just being aware and taking, maybe intentionally trying to take those things into account and talking about it.
Okay, I can understand that. So how, from your point of view, how can Vermilion residents get more involved in protecting the local water sources and promoting sanitation initiatives?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've seen from, I think the Sustainability Club has done this in town, is that they've tried to make people aware that there is a connection between our storm drains and things like that and our rivers, the Vermilion River and ultimately the Missouri River, that what we put on our yards, or if we dump anything in the street, that it's a direct link. And so I think that that's a neat thing that they've done to, that through kind of some of the painting they've done on the storm drains, the little murals and stuff. So I think that's a good step to just kind of making people aware of that and being careful about, what they would dump on their lawn or those types of things, and just being, just realizing the connection and being a little bit more careful.
Okay, so is there any other projects like that being done in Vermilion or around?
I don't know. I know that, like I said, I know that the sort of the painting, the storm drains, is something I've seen. It's kind of neat because it looks nice, so it kind of livens things up. But it also kind of is a reminder to people that what we do here does have an effect on the Vermilion River and the Missouri, and just the wildlife, the fish and the wildlife that occur there. So that's the only one I'm actually aware of at this point.
Okay. Since this exact project, do you know any ways that project could be more successful in increasing awareness?
Oh, that one of the painting.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much I don't know how much it's publicized, I guess. I think you can see it if you walk and you sort of see these painted storm drains, but I don't know how much it's been publicized more broadly, I guess, in town.
So maybe advertisements would help, like local bus stickers or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, what role do you think emerging water technologies can play in Vermilion to improve water quality or water management efficiency?
To be honest, I don't know enough about their current system to know. I would imagine it's always useful to have more information, and to have an understanding of more cutting edge technologies. There might be better ways to do things than they're doing now, but I actually don't know that much about what they're doing now. But it's always good to be aware, right? So of what the latest innovations are, and sort of always being open. Are there things that they can do that will improve water quality? Maybe there are things they can do that will save money and also make the system more efficient. But to be completely honest, I don't know. I assume they're doing a good job right now, but I don't really know what could be done better or exactly how they do things technologically.
Okay, I understand. You haven't seen the system itself.
What's that?
You haven't seen the system itself, so you can't.
No, I don't know I'm not an expert on water treatment, and I don't know exactly what they've been doing. I just know the problem they had a couple of years ago when they had the flood, and that was more just a kind of a extreme natural event that that maybe people hadn't taken into account. But I don't know exactly what they're doing in terms of the process and the technology that they have.
Okay. So do you have any hopes that Vermilion can achieve better sustainable water and sanitation practices in the coming decade?
Well, I would certainly hope so. I don't know how we're doing now. I imagine they're probably doing okay, but hopefully they can keep assuming that they're of good quality, they can keep that up. And one thing that I think you said, or we talked about earlier, is there might be the need to kind of adapt a little bit too. So adaptability would be a good thing. If we do start getting, for instance, more intense rainfall, and we get more frequent floods of the Vermilion River that could cause problems with the water treatment plant, it's certainly good if they are ready for those types of things. Take those things into account in the future, like what we had like a year or two ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is one change that you would implement in the current system?
I'm afraid I don't really know enough about the system to know.
No, I mean like water management on the whole in Vermilion.
Vermilion as a whole, I don't really know, to be completely honest. On the Missouri River, I would love to see a bit more consideration of fish and wildlife in the way that the river is managed, but that's sort of a high level thing, like with the Corps of Engineers and more federal level types of decision making. So I would like to see more happen there to help conserve the pallid sturgeon and some other species in the river. That's a little bit beyond Vermilion's ability to change things.
So since Vermilion doesn't have any access to any open bodies of water or any large bodies of water, do you think that Vermilion having good water management could potentially affect the ecosystem, or no?
Oh, well, I mean, I think, since we're along the Vermilion River, we could definitely have an impact on, we have an impact on that system, since the Vermilion River goes kind of right through the edge of town, and it's connected to the Missouri. So if there are problems with the Vermilion, and probably the problems that we would have on the Vermilion pollution-wise, some of them could be from the town, but probably the bigger issue is going to be all the land use in the watershed surrounding it. So, farmland and other things. So that definitely could have an effect on water quality and ecosystems certainly in the river itself, Vermilion, and then on the Missouri River because it's flowing into the Missouri River too. So maybe more like county-wide types of management are most critical, local too, but maybe more county-wide, for if we want to try to maintain, cleaner water in the Vermilion River and in the Missouri River then too, since they're connected.
Okay. One thing I thought of was a way to sanitize the output, like what that's what sewer plants do.
Yeah.
The sewage taken there and they are sanitized, but as you said, that flooding interrupted that.
That's my understanding, yeah.
Which caused pollution. So stuff like that can still be major causes of pollution. So
Yes.
I was thinking more smaller base, like section off areas of the certain community, and as the water goes down into the sanitation systems, it is sanitized there.
Oh, interesting. So instead of a little bit decentralized, if there are ways that you can so off the storm drains and stuff, and off of maybe the individual neighborhoods. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there are ways. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I don't know if there are ways to kind of decentralize it a little bit, so it's not quite so dependent on the one place where everything gets delivered there.
Or if that is not possible, we can lower the amount of sanitation done so whereas the water that is going to the treatment plant, it won't be as polluted as it normally is. So that way, say how there was one disaster that put the water going into the river, right?
Yeah.
That way we can make sure any extremely harmful substances don't ever reach the river in case of things like that.
Yeah.
It's a countermeasure. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of decentralizing it. I think one thing that you kind of hinted at too is sometimes when you have that happen in a community where they have some kind of a natural disaster and like their water treatment or their sewage treatment plant or water treatment plant kind of gets compromised, especially with the sewage treatment. And one thing that they often say is, well, we need cut back on your water use so that you're reducing the total amount that they've got to deal with down there. And so during that event, I don't remember, but during that event, I think one thing that would have been good, I think they probably did this, was encouraging people to sort of reduce their water usage a little bit, so less of it's going into the system that has to go to the treatment plant to get treated. So and water conservation in general can probably help with that too, that they don't have to deal with quite the volume of runoff from of various kinds in those situations.
That's understandable. Well, thanks for the
sure.
Thanks for the meeting.
Yeah, good interview. Yeah.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.